Well, welcome, folks. It's crazy at the White House. It's crazy in America, but it looks like we're winning. Good news across the board, really, as the Secretary of State is finally confirmed. Rex Tillerson will be an interesting man, the former head of Exxon, hugely successful business leader. And it looks like the White House is gearing up for a full-court press to get President Trump's nominee to the Supreme Court confirmed. The president is enlisting help from some of the most powerful conservative groups in Washington.
The Trump administration is also putting Iran on notice after its recent ballistic missile launch. Jennifer Wishon brings us the story from the White House.
Judge Neil Gorsuch is working to win over senators on Capitol Hill. He's being shepherded by an unlikely Trump ally. Former New Hampshire Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte spoke out against Trump during the campaign. Now she's using her contacts on both sides of the aisle to help get the president's Supreme Court pick confirmed. Republicans are singing Gorsuch's praises.
I think the president made an outstanding appointment. We're all thrilled.
The GOP needs 8 Democrats to gain supermajority approval for Gorsuch and prevent a Democratic filibuster against him. And while Democrat leaders are promising a fight, at least 7 Democrats have said they won't join in a filibuster. President Donald Trump wants to make sure he gets his man on the court, even if that means using what's known as the nuclear option, to change the Senate rules and allow Gorsuch to be confirmed with just a simple majority.
I would say, if you can, Mitch, go nuclear, because that would be an absolute shame if a man of this quality was caught up in the web.
The president met with an elite group of conservatives to discuss a battle plan.
We are calling our members to light up the phones in the Senate and to get this nominee through.
Some groups will target Senate Democrats facing tough re-election battles in 2018.
We believe this is an excellent choice, and we're going to do everything within our power to help him win confirmation.
We were the group that sued to overturn Obamacare, and we learned that one judge makes all the difference.
On another front, President Trump kicked off a month-long celebration of Black history at the White House with a listening session. That included an idea for curbing the epidemic of gun violence in Chicago.
I was recently contacted by some of the top gang thugs in Chicago for a sit-down. They reached out to me because they associated me with you. They respect you. They believe in what you're doing. And they want to have a sit-down about lowering that body count. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going in Chicago.
I think it's a great idea because Chicago is totally out of control.
Meanwhile, tough words on Iran from National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. He's pointing to the Islamic Republic's recent ballistic missile launch and attack against a Saudi ship as proof to the international community that the nation's behavior is destabilizing. He also called out the Obama administration for giving Iran a free pass on its reckless behavior.
The Obama administration failed to respond adequately to Tehran's malign actions, including weapons transfers, support for terrorism, and other violations of international norms.
A senior White House official says all options are being considered in response to Iran.
President Trump has severely criticized the various agreements reached between Iran and the Obama administration, as well as the United Nations, as being weak and ineffective. Instead of being thankful to the United States in these agreements, Iran is now feeling emboldened. As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Thanks, Jennifer. Listen, it's overdue. They made a patsy out of us. You know, with Obama, he rolled over for anything those mullahs wanted. It was just unbelievable. And without question, Iran is the source of terror throughout the Middle East. They're the sponsor, state sponsor of terror. And for us to be giving them concessions and paying them money and all the rest of it while they're building up this nuclear arsenal is insane. So we salute the President and General Kelly for what he's saying. And by the way, there are reports about the President and especially a call to the President of Australia. And apparently Trump was screaming at him, and we'll see what happens. But in this news, 2 foreign governments are denying media reports about phone calls between Trump and their leaders. Wendy Griffith has that.
Yeah, Pat, the phone calls in question both dealt with the issue of immigration. The Prime Minister of Australia told an Australian media outlet that reports that Trump hung up on him are not true. But President Trump said last night on Twitter, "Do you believe it? The Obama administration agreed to take thousands of illegal immigrants from Australia. Why? I will study this dumb deal." The Australian president says he knows Trump doesn't like the deal, but he believes he will honor it. And the government of Mexico says reports that Trump threatened to send U.S. troops to Mexico to deal with bad hombres are quite a downright lie. And a U.S. official says that remark was just lighthearted. Rex Tillerson is now the country's new Secretary of State. He was sworn in Wednesday night after the Senate confirmed him. And Senate Republicans have advanced more Trump cabinet nominations despite opposition from Democrats. Gary Lane has that story.
The yeas are 56. The nays are 43. The nomination is confirmed.
With that vote, the Senate approved former ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson for Secretary of State. At Tillerson's White House swearing-in ceremony, President Trump explained the task at hand for America's top diplomat.
You understand that the job of our diplomats and the mission of the State Department is to serve the interests of the United States of America, to make our nation safer, our country more prosperous, and our people much more secure.
Tillerson expressed appreciation for the cards, letters, and prayers he's received from many Americans.
As I serve this president, I serve their interest and will always represent the interest of all of the American people at all times.
Attorney General nominee Jeff Sessions received Senate committee confirmation Wednesday. Also confirmed were the nominations of Tom Price for Secretary of Health and Human Services and Steve Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary. Senate Finance Committee rules were suspended, and action moved forward despite a Democratic boycott of the committee vote. The absence of all Democrats surprised the usually reserved chairman Orrin Hatch, who said the tactic meant that Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer was now dictating the tactics of all the Democrats on the committee.
All of them appear ready to leap off whatever cliff he designates, even if it means breaching the good faith that has long been the hallmark of this committee.
Nearly 2 weeks into Trump's presidency, the U.S. Senate has confirmed only 5 of his cabinet nominees. That compares to 10 for President Obama in 2009. Republicans say Democrats are stalling as they try to delay the inevitable. Trump's nominees are expected to be approved because Republicans have a 52-seat majority in the Senate. No Democrat votes are needed. To get them through, nearly all Republicans would have to stand firm. But in the case of Betsy DeVos for Education Secretary, 2 are defecting from party ranks. They're Alaska's Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins of Maine.
I cannot vote to confirm her.
I think that Mrs. DeVos has much to learn about our nation's public schools.
Democrats, many influenced by the powerful national education lobby, grilled DeVos during her confirmation hearing.
In order to clarify, you never attended a public school, K-12 school, did you?
Correct.
And your children did not either, correct?
That's correct.
And you've never taught at a K-12 public school, correct?
I've not, but I've mentored in one.
DeVos is a strong supporter of school choice, charter schools, and vouchers. And Republicans say that's the main reason Democrats and the 2 Republicans oppose her. But if no other Republicans break ranks, Vice President Mike Pence is likely to break a 50-50 tie, so DeVos would be confirmed. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Pat, what do you think about this Democratic opposition to every single cabinet nominee?
I think it's just ridiculous, and I think he's making the Democrats look ridiculous. Do they have a plan? Do they have a program? Do they want to make America better? Do they want to improve the quality of life of each individual American? No. All they want to do is oppose. Well, the American people don't want that. They want action. They want us to move forward. We want to get away from the malaise of the Obama administration and move forward. And this obstructionism is not working. Now, let me explain to you, ladies and gentlemen, a little something about the Senate procedures. You know, you hear about what's called the nuclear option. Well, for years, when my father was in the Senate, the filibuster was considered a time-honored means of ensuring free speech. But it was also used by the Southerners to filibuster against any changes in the voting rights laws, et cetera, et cetera. But What that means is will be a motion. Somebody will be up on the floor, and he'll be talking, and they'll be keeping the Senate going, and they won't allow for anything to happen. So the man that's got the floor will have the precedent. And somebody along the way will say, well, I move for cloture, which means that they will shut down debate and have cloture. Well, in order to invoke cloture, they now have to have that 60-vote majority. And that's what they talk about. And so the so-called nuclear option says we're going to break the Senate procedures and rules and not allow filibusters along the way, and we will invoke cloture and shut people up, and regardless of if any 60 votes or 30 votes or whatever votes, a simple majority will do it. Well, who did that? Well, Harry Reid from the Democrats broke the time-honored rules of the Senate dealing with filibusters in order to pack the courts with Obama appointees in the lower courts. And so they rushed through dozens of liberal left-wing judges through breaking of the so-called nuclear option. Now, what they did was to reserve the 60-vote majority rule for Supreme Court nominees. And what Trump is saying, well, why should you keep that if we got a great man and you're going to try to filibuster him? So you could invoke closure and stop the filibuster. That's what they're talking about. And so Trump and Mitch McConnell can indeed do what Harry Reid did and say, look, we're going to have a simple majority. A majority will make a decision. We're not going to have that filibuster anymore in relation to these nominees. It can be done. All they got to do is do a vote. It's already had precedent. Harry Reid did it. The Democrats did it. And so what Trump is saying is, I can't do it, but Mitch McConnell can, and I urge him to do it in case they hold up my very fine nominee to the Supreme Court. Here's Wendy.
Thanks, Pat. Republicans in Congress have introduced 2 bills to change what's called the Johnson Amendment. That's the amendment that restricts political speech from churches and other nonprofit organizations. Our Abigail Robertson explains in this story from Washington.
House GOP members are wasting no time trying to help fulfill one of President Trump's biggest campaign promises to evangelicals, repealing the Johnson Amendment. One bill calls for its full repeal, but another just amends it to restore free speech to charities and houses of worship. Opponents of the Johnson Amendment argue it allows the IRS to bully and intimidate churches. Pastors who've been targeted by the law came to D.C. to share their stories. Houston pastor Hernan Castano says the city's lesbian mayor had his sermons and text messages subpoenaed because of his outspoken stance on issues like gay marriage. Castano was given a short period of time to turn them in, or he would face imprisonment.
It caused a lot of stress on the church members, a lot of questioning, and other pastors just fled in fear because obviously they couldn't believe this was happening in America.
Pastor Castano says the law causes a lot of confusion for clergy, and many do not understand why sharing their interpretation of scriptures could lead to fines or removal of tax-exempt status.
Talking to many pastors, I've seen the intimidation, the fear, and how they would not speak out because they don't want to lose their 501c3 status.
He says each year around election time, warnings and threats are sent to the church, citing the Johnson Amendment.
Everyone should have their full freedom of speech, not partial freedom of speech, which is what we're really happening right now in the pulpits of America.
Congressman Heiss and Senator Lankford agree, which is why they introduced legislation in both sides of the House to protect these pastors.
The Free Speech Fairness Act, just as it says, protects those free rights and enables pastors and so forth to deal with political issues without fear of intimidation or retaliation from our government.
Supporters of the Johnson Amendment argue a repeal would allow churches to turn into super PACs. But this bill prohibits nonprofits from contributing to political activities or candidates.
I'm trying to work on within the Senate with Republicans and Democrats alike to say, how can you be opposed to free speech? Now, I understand that there are some individuals that don't like it when churches speak out, but quite frankly, there are churches on the left and on the right politically that they should have the right. We as Americans shouldn't limit speech.
lawmakers have high hopes 2017 will be the year it goes. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abigail. And Pat, I know this issue is close to your heart.
For decades, Wendy, I've been fighting against this Johnson Amendment. How did it come into being? Well, Lyndon Johnson, who was a dictator in the Senate when he was majority leader, came on the floor, and he was mad because there was a nonprofit group out in Texas who was campaigning against him, and he got mad at it. So he went before the floor, no committee hearings, no legislative record of any nature, and he just rammed the vote through and put this amendment to the IRS code. And what it says is that the IRS, that a nonprofit is prohibited from endorsing, and then later was added, or opposing a candidate for public office. It was just that simple. And that's Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. All they've got to do is take that phrase out. It's no big deal. They could take a few words out and they'd have it. But they don't need a big bill about it. Just take that one clause out, and that's the Johnson Amendment, that they are prohibited from endorsing or opposing a candidate for public office. And that's the one that the IRS has used as a club over the head of churches. Now, in terms of the black churches, they take up contributions in, buckets for candidates, and nobody does a thing. They openly endorse candidates from their pulpit, and nobody does a thing. But when the conservatives on the right do it, then the IRS steps in and says, we're going to jerk your tax exemption. And you've got People for the American Way, and you've got all these other left-wing organizations writing letters to pastors say, if you do this, we're going after you. And it's been a fight over and over again, and unfortunately, it's very hard to win. So Trump has picked up on that, but all they've got to do is take that one clause out. Just take it out. It's that simple. They don't have to rewrite a bill, go through all these hoops. If they want to do it, that's fine. But all they got to do is lift out one clause having to do with the endorsement, support of, or opposition to a candidate for public office. Take that out and it's gone. Everything's fine.